Mark Arcy und Amir Kassaei.
Maybe we should wait another
2 or 3
minutes.
The presentation. Okay. Very good.
We found random one. Mark, I will just explain a little in German and then you're going back to English. Die Idee, die wir jetzt haben, was wir machen wollen, ich bin ja ein großer Verehrer von Mark Arcy, den habe ich kennengelernt vor 2-3 Jahren. Er ist einer der wenigen Menschen auf der Welt, der wahrscheinlich mehr fliegt sogar als ich. Right? Just saying, you're maybe one of the few people in the world who are more on planes than me. And I thought it would be a great idea and a great opportunity for a lot of us from the advertising and marketing side to have an inside look into Facebook. Because there are a lot of things going on, where a lot of people are discussing a lot of stuff, but there's also a lot of, from my point of view, misunderstanding of what is the potential of Facebook as a marketing tool, as a platform, and what are the common mistakes that the people are doing if they use it as a marketing tool, and how do you think we creative people or marketing people should use Facebook to unleash the potential that it has. So I will ask you some questions, Mark, and feel free to just tell us the honest truth about everything. And also, what I like about Mark is he's very honest. He's always very honest. He's not bullshitting around, which I like a lot. So we will not. I hope we will not waste your time. So the first question, Mark, is sitting in meetings with clients, sitting in agencies, talking to all different kind of people. There is a lot of misunderstanding about what is actually Facebook. Is it a media channel? Is it a platform? Is it the translation of social web? Is it infrastructure? So how you at Facebook are looking at Facebook? What is Facebook?
So the answer, first of all, thank you so much for having us here, and thank you Amir for inviting me to join on stage. So the answer is yes. The short answer is yes. I think the longer answer is I prepared some slides to sort of help us through this. So I brought this along. I've worked at Facebook for almost 3 years, 2.5 years, and at the sort of starting point of understanding what Facebook is it's a service-based company. And it was started, and these are the words of Zuckerberg when we went out and went public, is that we are deeply committed to building services that are really useful around connecting the world and understanding the world and building this knowledge economy and connecting people. And that's the starting point of what we do. So we're really deeply committed. And it's not a superficial thing. It's not a thing we say, but when we're in Menlo Park or in our offices, but it drives everybody who joins the company and everybody who works at the company. So that's the starting point. And in the moment, I'll play a film that really sort of, I think, is a lovely story that captures some of the impact. And obviously, everybody has stories about different ways Facebook's affected them and impacted their lives. And I think this is a lovely one. But I think to skip to the marketing part, this is a marketing congress, digital congress. From a marketing standpoint, I think we've gone through a lot of evolution of different ways people use Facebook. And really now what we're incredibly excited about is the way in which, as a media channel, as a media company, that part of our business, beyond this mission, for brands to reach people in unprecedented ways with incredible stories and utilities, and we'll get into some of that later, is really quite unprecedented. And from a creative aspect, which is where I approach it, is we're just at the very early stages, I say to creatives, I mean all over the world, we're like in the early 50s of television, right, of exploring what this is. And to me, it's a creative exploratory. But when you look at the reach, for those of you that are in the brand marketing space or performance space, whatever space you're coming to Facebook from. The reach and the ability to get the right story in front of the right people, to reach the people who matter to your business, is kind of unprecedented. The interesting thing for me is, what do you do when you get there? What do you do when you have that intersection? How do you deserve that space? So that's what I look at Facebook as. There are many different ways, whether you're building on a platform, whether you're publishing, different ways that we change the way in which people approach us. But really it's that intersection of a rather unprecedented engaged audience that intersects with business, and then what you do with that intersection. And let me show you this little film. It's only a couple of minutes, but it's a lovely story. Hopefully this will work. From India. And I just found this the other day and I thought it was worth sharing. It's a story of a man using the power of connectivity to do something quite amazing.
I have no idea when did it start. Who am I? Why am I here? I was diagnosed with tuberculosis meningitis, which complicated into hydrocephalus. And that's when I started forgetting things. I just remember waking up with no memory. I couldn't even recognize my own reflection. I had to get used to this idea that this is how I look. Absolutely nothing made sense. I had no idea what relationships meant, that he was my father, that she was my mother, and this was my brother. I did not speak to anybody because I didn't recognize them. And I didn't know what to say. I lost 27 years of experiences. It's the past that makes you who you are, right? So, who am I? When I was well enough to use and work on a computer, I started browsing through my history list. And there was this website called Facebook on it. And then it suggested that these are the people you may know. And that's how it started. Memories. They're not lost. They're there somewhere. If I can recognize one frame, I can identify the pieces of the puzzle. Imagine if that too wasn't there. How would I feel I connect with anything? That's how I've been living my whole life.
Coming back to the film, just to provoke you a little bit more.
Please do.
At the moment in the marketing world, it seems that a lot of brands are losing their memory. You know what I mean? Companies losing what is actually the main purpose of being and functioning. So what do you say to these people who are still trying to do business and marketing the way that they did in the last 100 years? And not really realizing the rapid shift which is happening, not only technology-wise, but also in the mind of the people.
Yeah, so I have a fun job. I get to work with a lot of different brands all over the world, and the first thing that we talk about when people say, well, how do I improve my publishing, or how do I tell my story on Facebook, is forget about all that. I love to talk about their purpose. And I think it's a really interesting, it's an easy phrase, but once you really get into why a company exists, and the reason I showed that is, these are the kind of stories we share inside Facebook that inspire us about our purpose. You need to know your purpose so that you can express it through not just communication, but everything you do. And the way I look at it with big companies, I normally look with very large companies, but I talk to them as like, if you think about small businesses, really great small businesses, all of you in this room have small businesses that you love. small independent companies that you love, and if you think about why you love them, I bet every single one of them is driven by a purpose. Could be a bike shop or a book shop or an Italian restaurant or anything you want to think of. But boy, I bet you have a connection with the humanity of the people who run that company, and you're overwhelmed with the drive of the purpose that they have, and that's why you connect with them. And I think, and this is a conversation that's gone a long time, but I think as companies have got very large and we've bought companies and things have grown, it's very easy for brands in particular and large conglomerates to get disconnected from that. And the ones that do really well, and the brand leaders I work with, are the ones that are deeply founded in having that independent spirit that's built around individual purpose. To your point of, let's go to this, so when you talk about marketing the same way, I think the overwhelming shift in empowerment that we've talked about for about a decade on stages like this, the empowered consumer, over about the last 24, 36 months, has radically expanded. This is a slide I stole from a great guy at Facebook called Sam Lesson, who runs Identity. And he refers to it as superpowers, which I think is a brilliant metaphor for understanding the shifts that are going on in vast amounts of the people in the world. That we don't just empowered by technology, we are literally compared to how we were a decade ago or 2 decades ago. We have superpowers. We have the ability, from a content standpoint, a lot of you in the content business or the media business or things like that, everything we make now, everything you make, everything DDB makes, competes with everything ever made, right, on some axis. That's extraordinary. To have universal access to anything ever made at any time on any device, which is rapidly approaching, the competitive set for our optimization of that is extraordinary. From a marketing standpoint, to approach that universe with the same confidence and hubris as someone in the 1960s saying, I'm rich and powerful, I have the right to buy this captive audience, is insane. Like, you just can't look at the shift in empowerment and the competitive set of people's attention and say it's the same. Now, there's an approach to this. The approach is we'll use all the science, the technology, and everything we have to win this battle. Or there's a different approach, which I advocate for, which has how do we shift what this is to change from marketing at people to start marketing for people, built around our purpose. And then from a communication arts standpoint, the things we're saying, the things we're producing, we start moving from this. We start shifting from 120 years of perfecting disruption to start believing in connection and the power of brand connections. And this shift starts at purpose and emanates through entire organizations. And I think Facebook is in no way the sole canvas that we're talking about here. What's going on is far more interesting than any single platform or any single company. It's a huge shift that you see the ability to say, I'm going to outspend and out-yell and I'm going to do this, to a shift where you want to connect people with the right messaging, with the right companies for the right reasons at the right time, and have people carry this message for us. And that's a huge shift. So I think the approach of like how you use Facebook, I can tell you, using Facebook as a huge media reach vehicle, absolutely. Using all these things, absolutely. But what really, the magic really starts happening when we build it around something on top of that that's far more profound.
So talking about using Facebook, what are the most common mistakes that people are making still, from your point of view, if you talk to marketers and creative people?
Yeah, so I think whenever you're on our side, of this, I'm at the point, I'm buried in this all the time, so it's very easy to look up and go, man, these people are making mistakes. I also have, I've worked at a very large television company for 7 years, I spent 15 years there. People are busy and people have a lot of things going on in their lives, and in their companies. And Facebook, you may have noticed, changes quite a lot, right? We change, the platform changes, the way we build, the way we construct things, because we've got this, going back to the first point, we're a service that constantly needs to remain dynamic and improve. So I don't think of them as mistakes so much as focusing on the real opportunities in front of you as marketers, as people in the advertising industry, and actually looking, if we walked in, if you didn't know anything about Facebook right now, you'd never heard of it, you've just woken up, and I went through the scale and the engagement and the way in which the world is connected around identity and the things that are going on, I think you would shift an incredible amount of attention and time, which is incredibly valuable because you only have a finite amount, to understanding this. What I look at as literacy, as really understanding a platform. And I think if there's a common mistake, I think one of the common mistakes is conflating multiple new things with what's going on at our company. and the scale. You don't have the time to become totally fluent and literate and operationalize around optimizing every single platform that comes out every 9 weeks. You do have the opportunity to pick, not just Facebook, but certain platforms that you feel are going to be central platforms to marketing, communication, and business in the coming decades. And when you place those bets, I think investing that time is really, really, really important. Specifically to Facebook, I'd say this is the simplest thing I would say. I've been at the company, as I said, about 2.5 years, and so much of the dialogue was, when I joined the company, was around social goals, people caring extraordinary amounts about fan growth or about social metrics. And I would just say this: start every conversation with anyone you talk to, anyone talks to you about Facebook, say, I want to start talking about my business goals. What are my business goals, and what will this platform do to provide measurable, provable results around business goals? And this is what we do when we're lucky enough to work with you. This is what we build everything around business goals, not so many people liked it or so many people did this. There's some interesting observations you can make, but you need to build everything around the business, which is exactly the same as everything else should be. But I think the newness of the platform has people, it's easy to lose focus for that. So start with business goals and invest behind those.
But what do you say to people? There's also a lot of people who are questioning the measurable dimensions of the results that we can produce of digital platforms. How can you make sure that you are getting the right results out of it in the context of business goals?
Yeah, so
because that's the day-to-day challenge that a lot of advertising people have, to not only guide and educate their clients, but also to prove that a concept or an idea is really adding value to the business.
Yeah, and so this is this creative measurability thing. So I think one of the things I love about the platform is the measurability of it, and Brad Small, who runs our measurement team globally, a lot of we've invested enormously over the last 2 years on proving out case study after case study after case study with the world's best marketers. We have a really quite prestigious client council who guide us in this, and we've built a measurement that's not Facebook measurement. I do air quotes, but then I'd have to hate myself. But not Facebook measurement, but the same measurement philosophies. And we've had amazing partnerships around the world with the top research officers of the leading companies to build our measurement studies to their standard of excellence. And we have, beyond that, we have a body of evidence of the efficacy of this. Not just, it's easier with performance-based marketing, obviously, but this is brand work. This is with Datalogics and so a lot of the brand effect work that we do to show case after case after case of the difference and the impact of that intersection point between being on Facebook and not being on Facebook. And this is where we're seeing clients all over the world use us for reach extension, for brand messaging, as you would. I mean, I used to be in as I said, the TV business. When we went to cable in the States, was sold as a broadcast replacement for reach. We're seeing similar moves definitely in people buying the extension of their audience on Facebook. And they're doing that because of brand lift, not because of just simple measurement, not simple, but simple measurable click measurement. The vast bulk of the lift in the studies we've seen, by the way, of where the brand lift comes from has very little to do with necessarily the engagement. It's a lot of it's to do with just the connection of the story with the people.
I'm just looking at my...
Are we flying through? Okay.
Yeah, we have another 10 minutes.
All right.
Maybe we make it 20 minutes. I think I will kill us afterwards, but let's try. I have 3 more questions.
Shoot.
We talked almost about the next one, but I will ask it again. So from your point of view, what are the most crucial things that you have to be able to do, or you have to adapt to unleash the potential of Facebook for brands, for products, for services, for marketing in general? Well, if you can only choose 3 things.
3 things.
And you have only 30 seconds.
You need to know why. You need to establish why you're showing up. I think you need a state of mind that says, what am I doing? The way I describe it as a dinner party conversation. You have to have a reason that you're entering the conversation, and you have to contribute something to it. I think that's true. Birnbach, talking to you, Birnbach believed this in 1952,
yes.
Right? You have to, the way I describe it is you don't have the right to be in my newsfeed, you have the opportunity. So what do you bring into that? And now that could be a beautiful film. My newsfeed at the moment is full of a beautiful film from, I think the company's True in Thailand, with a beautiful film, 3-minute film, is crushing it at the moment. Or it could be an amazing offer for a hotel in Greece. It could be whatever it is, but it's getting that intersection of like, I know why I'm showing up and I know why this story or this offer or whatever it may be is going to be engaging to you. So I think you need to have purpose, you need to be structured about what you're doing, and you need to unleash the best creative talent you have in the world on the platform. You know, as the platform becomes increasingly a driver of brand connection, you need the best. And you look at the craft skills, and I can show you some things here because I know where I'll fly through this. These are our studio awards, so we will believe very much in creativity. Amir is one of the judges of this. And traditionally, a lot of this work that people would look at for building on Facebook will be applications and complicated. This is a beautiful thing Nike did in Brazil, and it's not to disrespect this work. I love this work, but this is a deeply complex piece of engineering, social engineering. When you talk about publishing, you need to ask yourselves, marketers here, people who run ad agencies, you need to look at the cadence of creativity, not just the content of creativity, and say the cadence has changed fundamentally, not just on Facebook, but for a lot of platforms. And am I structured? We work a lot with agencies clients around the world on structure to create structure. So the output of the structure. These are some posts from a site we have with the One Club and Your Club newsfeeder. The publishing looks a lot like the craft of different craft skills we have. The difference is the cadence with which you put those together. So beautiful photography, great writing, great humanity, great insight, the ability, and I think we're going to talk about data, but hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about data, to inform the data so these stories are getting to the right people is really important. But it can be sight, sound, emotion. This is a piece out of Wendy's that was incorporated Twitter and Facebook, and they started singing songs.
Yes, I am on board.
Right, so they said they romance people with their tweets and their Facebook updates on how much they love this new pretzel burger they put out, right? It was quite an involved production. But I'll show you three to give you some examples. So I get asked all the time, what's the great creator on Facebook? Who's doing the best work? We have 1 million advertisers on Facebook, right? We have 1 million people publishing and investing and spending. A lot of them are small businesses that are putting, if not all their budget, the vast majority of their budget behind these companies that their entire families depend on. That to me is a pretty amazing investment when you talk about does it work and the efficacy. So I'll show you 3 posts in the coffee category. So just to give you the diversity and the different ways different companies can do things. So the first one obviously from Starbucks, one of our best long-term partners, a real friend of the company. And this is a really wonderful thing they use Facebook to get the word out about after the tornadoes in Oklahoma, where they did a fundraising drive to go in and buy a cup of coffee, and they would donate money to the cause, right? And they use Facebook to do this. They do a lot of publishing, really high quality. The next piece is from France, from Publicis in Paris, the Nescafé, where they built an entire documentary series. It's very funny and quite moving, where a man goes all over France meeting up with his Facebook friends to find out if they are really friends, to investigate the concept of friendship, right? So this guy goes around and has a Nescafé and uses that as the connection point to his relationships. Sight, sound, emotion, what you'd think of this, you'd probably do a microsite for it, right? The last one is my local coffee shop in Camden in London. She has 164 fans and no marketing department. But every couple of days she writes something funny on her chalkboard and posts it to Facebook, right? She had another one yesterday that said, today's soup flavour, double espresso, right? She's very funny. So you've got an enormous company, right? You've got another enormous company, and then you've got a small company. All in the same pixels, all engaging with the people who matter to their business, with a story that matters to the people who are getting it. Wild support for this with their fans. So I think the simple thing is great creative on Facebook is great creative, right? Great creative on Facebook is great creative. That's the starting point. We can get into nuance, but that's the starting point.
Coming to another buzzword, talking about bullshit bingo. Data.
Yeah.
And the whole...
Have there been some panels on data at the conference that I'm not aware of?
I'm sure.
Okay.
If we were discussing this before, I said every time I'm hearing wherever I am in the world at the moment, people talking about big data, there are the 3 V's: velocity, volume, and verity, and nobody, not even the technology companies, to a certain degree, are talking about the value part of it, which I think that's the most important take out of it. So I was very, very curious to hear your point of view on how do you see the whole development in terms of the potential of data and where it will lead us, talking about privacy concerns, talking about using data and the different types of data, connecting them together, generating the right insights, and delivering something which has the name value and has a meaning and a relevance instead of just algorithm, which is not really all the time very useful. So, but I wanted to hear your point of view.
Yeah, so I mean, there's two things, there's data and there's privacy. From a privacy standpoint, I go back to my opening. I get asked a lot, obviously, about privacy, and it's good to ask about privacy. And I go back to the first slide I showed, which is the founder of the company, the founding of the company. That is just deeply rooted in protecting and looking after, our billion-plus users. And it's such a deep commitment, I can't really overstate how much every single part of the company is built around that, and that being sacred, and really, really important. From a marketing standpoint, as far as data, we talk a lot about data, and everyone talks about data and how data is going to do this thing. And it could be because of where I come from in the industry, which is the creative part of it. I look at it selfishly in this way. People talk about performance, and they talk about optimization of content delivery and things like that. I look at it as a future where I have to see less terrible advertising. And I think terrible advertising and meaningless messaging is actually a waste of money for the marketer, and I think it's not a great user experience. So I care deeply about the experience our users have connecting with brands. And I think data, the most exciting thing with data is unleashing great creative potential to tell really meaningful stories, or right through the funnel, right? Really meaningful stories, or really powerful, useful offers, or utilities, or building utilities and getting them to the right people that are incredible manifestations of the brand purpose and promise to the right people. And it's never going to be perfect, and we're far from perfect now, but I really see a future where you'll be able to look at really large protected data sets and say, we should be creating this. These people would love this, and that's what we're starting to do now as far as, like, what are people going to really love at the intersection of this brand and this person's time. So it's useful, it's elegant, it's beautiful, it's meaningful, it may save them money. We built a wonderful thing that we've just been beta now with Target, the big department store in America, called Cartwheel, which basically takes couponing and makes it completely social and completely shareable and really convenient. And my team will be like 60 people in Target around the world to launch this. And if you go to Target and you check it out, Cartwheel is this amazingly useful, money-saving utility, right? But as marketing, it's far better than an ad in some ways because it demonstrates real value. So for me, data is building things that are incredibly useful around a brand's purpose and distributing to the right people. And I do not see it, it's two sides of it. I don't see it as optimizing, getting more stuff to disrupt more people's lives. I actually see it the absolute opposite. I actually see a more intelligent connection of businesses and people.
Talking about data, but also talking about, because I think now we have to come to an end almost.
No.
One last question. How do you see the future of marketing, branding, and advertising looking at the next 10 years? It's tough to talk about the future, I know, but you have always an insight and a feeling and intuition about where things are going.
Yeah.
So I would love to know what you think about it. And maybe, and that's another thing which we should discuss, is a lot of people are keeping talking about what will change all the time. And less people are talking about what will never change. And I think that's something that we should remember ourselves too.
Yeah.
Right? Sorry.
So I think what we'll say the same. People love brands. Brands are an integral part of our modern society, and we love them. We love them deeply. And I've always, probably because again I grew up as a copywriter, I love advertising. Like I love films and this product of how we manifest brand stories and narrative. I think the difference is, I think the big shift is going to be, as I said, we've got to stop marketing at people to start marketing for people. The billions of dollars we spend trying to disrupt people and get in between get in between them. If you turn that around and say, how do we invest this money in a way that we are telling stories, we are doing, it's not changing what we do, it's really changing the purpose behind what we do it. I think it's going to get far more sensitive to that. I think companies with this idea of all business being small business, I can tell you story after story after story of large companies demonstrating intimacy at scale, demonstrating humanity, and people just rallying behind them. That this idea that as people are empowered, I think technology also enables the humanization and sort of compassion of companies to demonstrate the values of the people who work at those companies. And there are examples all over the world. And once again, if you think that's hard to think of because you run a very large company that's very powerful, think about small businesses and how they do it. And think about how, through platforms like Facebook, you can scale that out. You can actually scale these connections so they really imbue your brand with real meaning. And the nicest thing when we see these stories, when large companies have done this, is the employees that take the most pride. So I think of marketing going far more from the battle that we always use, all business uses so many war metaphors, like we're going to target them and do this. I think of it far more, as I said, marketing for people, not marketing at them. Great
Can I jump in here? Yeah. Sorry if I interrupt you, because the conversation is obviously entertaining a lot of people out there, and I would love to listen to you for the rest of the day. But the truth is, there's a program and we are getting late.
All right.
Okay? You've done a perfect job.
All right.
Give them a hand. They've done a wonderful job here.